I was only 8 when I spent the winter holidays at my grandfather's cabin in a remote corner of northern New England. The cabin sat on the edge of town, surrounded by open fields and a dense pine forest. Winter brought bone-chilling cold, snow-covered paths, and an eerie silence that swallowed the world at dusk. From somewhere in the mist, the distant howl of a fox echoed. The first few days passed quietly. My grandfather would light a roaring fire each night and tell stories, old village tales, sometimes ones that made a child's imagination run wild. But that night, during the full moon, everything changed. A thick fog had rolled in. I sat alone on the porch, trying to catch my breath in the icy air, shivering. Suddenly, I heard someone whisper my name, Arif. I jumped. Maybe it was my grandfather calling, but the windows were closed and the cabin was silent. I looked around. No one was there. Only strange shadows moved in the fog. Must be imagining things, I whispered to myself. A few seconds later, the voice came again, soft, sinister, and unmistakable. Arif, come here. Fear spread through me like wildfire. Slowly, I began to walk toward the voice. Then my eyes caught something on the snow-covered ground. 2 sets of footprints, but they weren't leading into the cabin. They led out, vanishing into the fog. I wanted to call my grandfather, but froze. The cabin door was locked from the inside. He was sound asleep. Outside, there was nothing. Curiosity pushed me forward. I gathered courage and followed the footprints. My breath fogged the air as I stepped into the cold. Minutes passed, each step making my heart pound harder. Then I felt it, someone walking behind me. I stopped. Silence. I moved again. The sound returned, louder this time. I turned, and my blood ran cold. There, in the swirling fog, was a tall, shadowy figure. No face, no eyes, just darkness shaped like a person. The wind had stopped. The world was frozen. My heart thumped like a drum. I ran back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. My grandfather slept on, oblivious. Peering through the window, nothing moved. The world was silent once more. The next morning, I told my grandfather everything. He listened quietly, then said, "That's the spirit of the old pine forest behind the house. Every winter, especially on full moon nights, someone hears its call. Whoever answers never comes back." I froze. That day, I realized how close I had come. If I hadn't turned and run, I might not be telling this story. Even now, decades later, I can still feel that night's terror lingering in the back of my mind. The thing about being 8 years old is you still believe in the magic of things, even if the magic is just the kind that gives you nightmares. And when you're 8 and spending Christmas break in your grandpa's cabin in the deep woods of northern Vermont, you get a lot of both. The cabin was all knotty pine and old stone, sitting at the very edge of an enormous stretch of white pine forest. Winter there wasn't just cold, it was a biting, throat-aching quiet, the kind where the sound of the crackling fire inside was the loudest noise for miles. Everything outside was frosted white, and the air was so still, you could hear a pine needle drop 20 feet away. For the first few days, it was classic New England Christmas. My grandfather, a retired logger named Red Kelly, he had a massive red beard, would tell me tales around the hearth, old village stories, maybe about a rogue moose, sometimes about the old spirits that supposedly lived in the dense woods. But it was the night of the full moon when the whole atmosphere shifted. A heavy, thick fog, the kind that blankets everything and steals all the sound, had rolled in just after sunset. I was sitting on the tiny front porch, wrapped up like a mummy, trying to catch the feel of the extreme cold. My breath puffed out like smoke signals, and then I heard it. My name, Caleb. I froze. My name wasn't Arif here, it was Caleb. I thought maybe Grandpa Red was calling me from inside, but the cabin windows were shut tight and the silence in the house was absolute. I looked around, straining my eyes into the fog. Nothing but the black shapes of the pine trees, blurring in the mist. I muttered, "Just the wind, Caleb. You're hearing things." Then it came again, closer, distinct, and terrifyingly clear, like a whisper right next to my ear. "Caleb, come here now." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the weather. My feet felt heavy as I slowly stepped off the porch. I looked down at the snow right in front of the door. There was a single set of footprints. The strange thing was, they weren't leading to the cabin. They were leading away from the door, straight into the thickest part of the forest, as if someone had just walked out and vanished into the fog. I wanted to yell for Red, but I just stopped. The cabin door was latched from the inside. Red was asleep, snoring faintly, and there was no one outside, only the disappearing tracks. My 8-year-old curiosity wrestled with my fear, and curiosity won. I started following the prints. The air around me felt dead and heavy. I walked for a few minutes, maybe 20 yards, and then I became aware of it. A second, soft crunching in the snow right behind me. I stopped. The sound stopped. I walked. The sound resumed, keeping my pace. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I spun around, ready to scream, and then I saw it. Just a faint shape in the swirling white fog. It was tall, impossibly elongated. It had no discernible face, no eyes, just a patch of deeper, moving shadow against the lighter grey mist. Even the cold wind seemed to have died completely, right around it. That was enough. I turned and ran like a shot, bursting through the cabin door and slamming the heavy latch shut. I collapsed onto the floor, panting. Grandpa Red was still asleep. I crept to the window and peeked out. The forest was silent again. The fog was thinning slightly. The next morning, Red listened to my story as he poured our coffee. My coffee was mostly milk and sugar. He was quiet for a long time. Then he leaned in, stirring his mug. "That, Caleb," he said, his voice low, "is the Watcher in the pines. They say he's the oldest spirit in these woods. Every winter, especially on the full moon, he calls someone's name. Anyone who answers the call and follows the tracks, well, they usually don't make it back before the spring thaw." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my mug. If I hadn't panicked and run back, if I had taken one more step further into that fog. To this day, every time a thick fog rolls into the town where I live and the temperature drops below freezing, that silent, eyeless shadow of the white pines is the first thing I remember, and I make sure to keep every door and window securely locked. It was New Year's Eve. The city was alive with lights, fireworks, and crowds of people, but I've never been the party type. Still, at my friend's insistence, I had to go this time. My friend Trav had organized a small get-together at his house, a quiet place on the outskirts of town. A big yard, open space, and only a few distant houses. It all felt peaceful, almost isolating. We laughed, told stories, played games, and watched the countdown. Outside, fireworks lit the sky, the sounds echoing faintly in the distance. Inside, though, everything was calm and ordinary. Hours passed. By 3 a.m., my head felt heavy. I wanted to leave. I went downstairs and found Trav asleep on the sofa. Everyone else had either nodded off or was barely awake. It wasn't safe to ask anyone to drive me, so I went outside and ordered a ride on my phone. The app said 10 minutes. I walked to the end of the driveway and sat down, wrapping my jacket tightly. The world was unnervingly silent. No cars passed. The cold air pressed against my face, and the distant bark of a dog echoed like a warning. Every minute stretched, tense and slow. Then a car appeared. The window rolled down. A man asked, "Uber?" I hesitated, then nodded and got in the back seat. The driver looked about 50, short hair, thick beard, deep voice. As he drove, he glanced at the rearview mirror. "Party tonight?" he asked. "Yeah, a small gathering with friends," I replied, forcing a laugh, but something about his eyes made me uneasy. They were fixed on me, unblinking, analyzing. I tried to ignore it, pressing my head against the seat. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. "Your driver has arrived." Below that, a message. "Where are you?" My heart stopped. This car wasn't my Uber. I slowly lifted my head. The driver was staring at me in the mirror, waiting, as if testing whether I had realized. Panic surged. I tried to appear calm, sliding my phone back into my pocket, but each second felt suffocating. We drove onto unfamiliar roads, dark, deserted streets, barely any streetlights. I knew instinctively that we weren't going toward my house. The longer I waited, the more danger I felt creeping closer. Finally, the car stopped at a red light. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I didn't wait. I opened the door and jumped out. The driver honked and surged forward. I fell hard but scrambled to my feet, sprinting with every ounce of energy. Behind me, the car vanished into the night. I ran until I found a house with lights on, knocked frantically, and someone finally came out. That night, I survived. Even now, whenever I book a ride, I check the car number, the driver's name, and the app, because that New Year's Eve taught me a terrifying truth. Sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts, they're humans in disguise. I was staying at an old family cabin deep in the remote woods of Maine. Nothing fancy, just a small, sturdy cabin my grandparents had built with their life savings. Over the years, our family would sometimes escape here instead of traveling elsewhere. I had planned to spend 3 nights here just after New Year's. Getting to the cabin wasn't easy. The last few miles were untamed wilderness, no proper roads, just snow-packed trails that could only be navigated by foot or snowmobile. In winter, the landscape seemed almost otherworldly, the silence thick as freshly fallen snow. When I arrived, I lit the wood heater and unpacked. The scent of burning pine and warm wood filled the cabin. A calm descended over me, the kind of quiet that erased the chaos of the outside world. The first day passed peacefully. Before sunrise, I prepared breakfast over the stove, bundled up, and stepped outside to fetch more wood. That's when I noticed it. Footprints in the snow, right in front of the cabin. They led into the forest, not down the road, vanishing among the trees. My heart skipped a beat. How could anyone have come all the way here overnight without making a sound? If someone had passed by last night, I surely would have heard. Something wasn't right. I brought in more wood and tried to focus on the warmth of the fire, yet the unease lingered. As the sun rose and the temperature climbed slightly, I decided to follow the footprints into the dense forest, curious whether they continued deeper. 20 minutes into the woods, the prints stretched on, perfectly spaced, unbroken. The forest lay blanketed in white, silent except for my own crunching steps. Then came another sound, light, deliberate, like another set of footsteps, but from nowhere. The wind had died, the birds had vanished. It felt as if the forest itself had stopped breathing. Fear shot through me. Every hair on my body stood on end. I whispered, "Hello, is anyone there?" No reply, only the snow, the trees, and a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. Then I caught movement in the corner of my eye, shadows shifting between the trees just beyond the reach of my flashlight. A figure, tall and still, seemed to watch me. My pulse hammered in my ears. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else. I bolted. My snowmobile was my only escape. I raced back toward the cabin, heart in my throat, breath turning to mist in the icy air. The footprints hadn't just appeared. They had returned toward the cabin, as if whoever or whatever had a purpose. Reaching the road, I finally slowed, snowmobile tracks cutting a crisp line through the untouched snow. My mind raced. Had I witnessed a lost traveler, a hunter, or something more sinister, something that chose to remain hidden in the night? I never returned to that cabin. Some things can't be explained, and those footprints, returning in the night, the sound of footsteps in the still forest, were one of them. If you ever wander into the high, snowy woods of northern Maine, don't expect to find my name on any visitor list. I will never go back.